Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the weekend warm-up. I'm Joshua Nunn. You know me as the Duck, and I'm joined by my Action Network co-host, Sean Paul. Our man Breezy is soaking it up in Miami this week, so Sean is filling in, and I am very excited to introduce him to all of you. Every Friday, we're coming at you live, making final additions to our weekend card. We're looking at the latest market movements, steam, injury reports, all to help you stay ahead of things in college hoops and get you chambered up for the weekend. Since we're live, we're going to be taking questions from you in the audience along the way. You can submit your questions here on YouTube, over at the Action Network Discord, or you can tag us on Twitter X. Please hit that like button while you're here on YouTube and hit the notifier button so you get alerted every time we air an episode. Sean, welcome to the show, man. We know you're an experienced college basketball bettor and a big fan of the MAC and the Big Ten, two great college basketball leagues. Tell our audience more about your college basketball fandom and some of your betting history.
Yeah, I've always been a big college basketball fan. Just growing up watching it, a lot of Pac-10 stuff. Now Pac-12, I guess, going to be coming back here. It's kind of just what I grew up with. So seeing that, and then kind of just branching out, getting into some sports betting stuff, and the MAC and Big Ten, I just feel like are particularly interesting. Those are kind of the two leagues I told you about because the MAC, obviously, with all the Friday games, can be kind of entertaining, and then the MAC tournament I feel like is always fun, and then the Big Ten, just all the home teams that pull off upsets in league play, I feel like is always entertaining and worth watching. But yeah, I've been with Action for 3 years. It's the first audio stuff I've done with them, so I'm definitely excited to join you because I've been a big fan of your work for a while as well.
Yeah, I've joked with people in the past that my three favorite college basketball leagues are the MAC, and the MEAC.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of fun when you get other guys that like those leagues. I thought it was fun talking off air about some of reminiscing about some of the NCAA tournaments of the past and some of the recent upsets that were really memorable to us. We all remember that magical run from Oral Roberts, an unlikely run at that. They had 11 regular season losses. They went on to knock off Ohio State and Florida before missing a real close buzzer beater against the Hogs, which would have sent ORU to the Elite Eight. Talk about your favorite memory from that Max Asmus led ORU squad.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that one in particular kind of hits home for me because I tweeted out just like a random throwaway tweet almost that like, hey, I if Oral Roberts matches up with Ohio State in the tournament as like a 15-2, I would definitely take Oral Roberts in that matchup. And I tweeted that like 2 weeks before the Summit League tournament. And then obviously that win happened, and then ESPN like tweeted it out, and I only had like 1,000 followers at the time. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So then I just kind of only grown from there, but just kind of that run in general, just kind of that's what around when I made my Twitter account that first year that I was on Twitter, was that Oral Roberts run, and just seeing the way Max Asmus and Kevin O'Banner and all those dudes were just draining threes left and right. I think that's one of the more memorable NCAA tournament runs in recent memory, at least for sure.
Yeah, it was a really fun team coached by Paul Mills. I actually used to live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where the Summit League championships were held, and I was in attendance for a portion of that tournament and was able to see that ORU team up close and personal. I remember Jackrabbit fans were not happy that night in the Summit League tourney when Oral Roberts defeated them, but it was really, really fun basketball to watch for sure. On this podcast, we talked early, Mike and I, about some of the darlings of college basketball, and that has come to fruition. Teams like Miami of Ohio and St. Louis. Talk about maybe another team that's not getting as much attention that's on your radar that we might need to start thinking about that could get into the NCAA tournament and maybe find themselves into the second weekend.
Yeah, one that really stands out to me is Murray State. Ryan Miller coming in, another guy with South Dakota ties, obviously, and him coming into Murray State this year. They're 17-7. They were 8-0 to begin Missouri Valley play. They lost four straight games to Drake, Northern Iowa, Illinois State, and Belmont. Their defense kind of fell off a cliff during those games, and they also shot it really poorly from three. But when you look at this team, they kind of have all the ingredients that you want for a team to make a run. They have high major talent: Fred King, Mason Miller, JJ Trainer, guys who all transferred from the high major level that play pretty pivotal roles for this Murray State team. They have good guard play with Javen Jackson shooting over 40% from three. Roman Doman, a really skilled French guard. They just have really well-rounded talent. They play a really up-tempo style. It'll come down to getting stops on the defensive end, but their size, athleticism, and guard play will definitely make them a contender to win some games should they get to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, really a dangerous 13, 12 type of team and hard to prepare for. They press a little bit, they run fast tempo. So definitely could be a team to keep our eye on as we get into the late stages of February. Before we get into the bets, there's a quick and easy way for you to tail all of the action discussed here in the show. First, sign up for Action Pro. You will get instant notifications when Action Network experts track a play, whether that's me, Stucky, Breezy, Greg Waddell, Three Man Weave, the list goes on. You'll want to get alerted right away in real time. Plus, you can access our pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team. There's a ton of other benefits as well. Right now, we've got a special offer for all of you. In honor of Super Bowl 60, we are giving you $60 off a year of Action Pro. Don't miss out on the best bets at the best prices. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro to get $60 off a year of Action Pro. That's actionnetwork.com/pro for $60 off. Sean, we talked at the top of the show about one of your favorite historical Cinderella stories of the last 5 years, but let's pivot now to this year, specifically as we get into and approach the second half of teams' conference slates. In prior episodes, Mike and I have discussed a couple of different teams having shown some value in the futures market. We talked about Texas Tech, Florida, Houston, Illinois, and Tennessee. But talk to me about what you are seeing in the futures market and maybe a team that you think is flying a bit under the radar that could potentially pique your interest in wanting to get down a futures play.
Yeah, one that really stands out to me is Virginia. And you look at this team, you can get them at 60-1 in a couple spots. And 60-1 just feels a little bit too high for what this team could do in the NCAA tournament. They're really, really well rounded on both ends of the floor, 22nd in defensive efficiency, 17th in offensive efficiency. But the three things I really look at with this Virginia team is they hold teams to 44% shooting from inside the arc. They have two really good European bigs in Thista Ritter and Johan Grunlow, who's just been an absolute monster, erasing shots down low. They grab offensive rebounds at a 40% clip, and teams who grab offensive rebounds at rates like that typically are really hard to upset in the NCAA tournament. So they're probably going to at least win one game. And the way they can shoot the three when they get hot, 46% of their shots come from three. Everybody on the floor can shoot it. Their guard play isn't the best in the NCAA tournament, but Malik Thomas can get hot. Sam Lewis can get hot. Chance Mallory's a really good young guard. I think all of that will lead to Virginia making a Sweet 16 or better run. And as you guys talked about last week, for a futures play to be profitable doesn't necessarily mean that you have to win the whole thing. You just have to find opportunities to hedge and make that an overall profitable future bet.
Yeah, very good. And I think Virginia is really interesting to me. Ryan Odom has tournament experience. He's won everywhere that he's coached, and he's got the Who's playing really good basketball, a much different style of basketball than we've grown accustomed to with Virginia. But you talk about DeRitter, that guy can score the basketball. Malik Thomas can shoot. Sam Lewis is consistent. Chance Mallory scores 10 points every game. It appears these guys are real hungry. They're great on the offensive glass, second chance points, and a team that can secure offensive rebounds and gain extra possessions. That's just a killer in the NCAA tournament. They've got wins over SMU, Louisville, NC State, and still some upcoming chances to pad the resume. Many projected brackets have UVA sitting on the 4 line. But talk to me about this. Does Virginia have anything else that they need to prove to you? And how far do you think these guys can go in the NCAA tournament?
I think they can definitely make a second weekend run, but obviously, when you get to that second weekend, anything can happen, right? You get a Sweet 16, Elite Eight, couple bounces go your way. You find yourself playing in Indianapolis in the Final Four. From a top tier wins perspective, that Louisville win was impressive. That SMU win that you mentioned was impressive. That Texas win earlier in the season has aged pretty well. And the thing about all of those games where they were all road games, this is a team, and they beat NC State and Raleigh too. This is a team that is very battle tested in road games. And I think that'll matter in the NCAA tournament. I feel like sometimes we see these teams who just dominate teams at home. Virginia has shown the ability to win in tough environments. And in the NCAA tournament, you're destined to face some tough environments with some adversity headed your way. I think their game against Duke in Cameron here in a couple weeks on February 28th will be a pretty big one. That's the only time they face Duke this year. If they can go and pick up a big win over Duke, I expect that we're going to see those futures tickets to already look profitable. Plus, they're probably going to end up close to that 3 line if they win that game. And if they do that, they're going to face a 6 seed. Then I feel like everything kind of lines up for them to make an even deeper NCAA tournament run. So in a way, I'm kind of banking on them landing on that back end of the 3 line and using that to propel them to a decent NCAA tournament run and make that 60-1 look really profitable.
You mentioned being battle tested on the road, and in the NCAA tournament, you play two games in 2 days, and every game's on the road. Nobody's at home. You get those neutral site environments. You get the different floor with the NCAA tournament logo on it. You might play a game at 12:45 p.m. Eastern, which is unique. I think that's real interesting. Another team that I was looking at that has some sort of that weathered sort of feel is Purdue, currently priced at 30 to 1. And I think people are throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. I know Purdue lost 3 games in a row, but Braden Smith is electric. Kaufman Wren has such a versatile game. Fletcher Lawyer can absolutely bomb the long ball, and his shooting can be game changing, good or bad. When he's on, these guys are really, really dangerous offensively. I get that these guys lost 3 games in a row. They were all by 6 points or less. And they went into some hostile environments, did Purdue. I kind of like that battle tested sort of feel. The
Mhm.
losses kind of bruised the ego a little bit here, but we're still projecting Purdue on the 3 line come Selection Sunday. They get a home bout with Michigan in 10 days, which will be huge. They get the Spartans coming into their building. I think Purdue has a chance to strengthen the resume and improve its positioning. This is still a very dangerous team, completely capable of getting to the Sweet 16 and beyond. Now we're getting 30 to 1 on the futures pricing for the ninth rated team in KenPom. They're second in offensive efficiency, one of the best rebounding teams in the entire country. Sean, do you have any thoughts on the Boilers and their current pricing in the futures market?
I mean, kind of similar to what I said about Virginia, when you have that rebounding stability, that gives you a pretty solid floor. Like, you're not going to get upset by a mid-major team when you have the size that teams like Virginia and Purdue have. Obviously, Purdue with Kaufman, Wren, and Oscar Clough, those two are just a towering force down low. Obviously, though, on the flip side, we saw they could be taken advantage of. Illinois showed that by getting Clough on switches defensively. But even then, Illinois needed 46 points from Keaton Wagler to end up winning that game. That's not going to happen a ton. And all their losses this year to pretty good teams, two of them on the road, and their two home losses were to Iowa State and Illinois, two top five teams in KenPom. When you have a guard like Braden Smith, that really boosts your ceiling in the NCAA tournament. Kind of just comes down to which version of Fletcher Lawyer you're getting, though. He's had some ups and downs throughout his career, ups and downs this season, even. But if he's hitting shots the way he's capable of hitting, the sky's the limit for this Purdue team, and that 30 to 1 could end up looking real good with all the experience, talent, and coaching that this Purdue team has under Matt Painter.
Everybody knows about the Wooden Award betting markets and the national championship betting markets, but one emerging market that is starting to gain traction with bettors would be the in-season conference futures market. This is something you wanted to talk about. I'm glad you're bringing this up today. Many books have these offered for the power leagues, but we've even seen this market become expanded with widely available numbers on the MAC, the A10, the Southern Conference, even the Missouri Valley, and the West Coast Conference. When you look at assessing the price offerings out there and comparing how these teams are playing, upcoming remaining schedules, a likelihood of a team tripping up or pulling an upset, you certainly can find some value in these markets. The West Coast Conference has historically been a two-horse race, and the pairings have been the two flagship programs of the last 20 years in the WCC, obviously Gonzaga and St. Mary's. But Sean, you think there's another team out there in California that can step up and have a lot to say about who's going to win this league. So talk me through who it is and why you feel a futures price is appetizing right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna play plus 425 on Santa Clara to win the WCC. And you're probably thinking teams not named St. Mary's and Gonzaga don't really win this league, kind of like Duck said. But this year feels a little bit different. We already saw this Santa Clara team go and beat St. Mary's at home 62 to 54. Those two will have another matchup on February 25th in Moraga. Obviously, St. Mary's will be favored at home in that game. But St. Mary's this year, they're an up and down team. They're pretty poor offensively. Their finishing inside just hasn't been up to snuff, shooting 51% from inside the arc. So I'm a little bit weary on taking them to win this league. Even if they beat St. Mary's, they do have another date against Gonzaga. I don't think they'll end up winning both of those games. So I think they'll pick up another loss, being their third in conference play. But Gonzaga right now lost that game against Portland, but that's kind of been brewing for a while. They barely beat San Francisco at home. They had some earlier closer calls against Seattle. A game against San Diego ended up being a lot closer than they probably wanted it to be. Their offense just isn't nearly as good as it is for most Gonzaga teams. And I don't see them making it out of the rest of conference play with just one loss. I do think they'll lose at Santa Clara, and it wouldn't surprise me if they picked up another loss somewhere in there, maybe at San Francisco. That could be another spot where the Zags fall down because you have to remember right now they don't have Braden Huff. Their guard play has proven to be pretty shaky at times this year. They don't have that reliable point guard play that they've had in the past. So I don't really get them being as big of favorites as they are. And the Santa Clara team, this is a really well-rounded bunch. They shoot threes really well. They have a lot of size. They shoot 58% on twos, only 33% from three, but they shoot a lot of threes. I think there's some more shooting upside for them. They even have a little bit of pro potential with Christian Hammond, a 6'4" guard shooting 40% from three. Alan Graves, a guy that's really popping on some people's NBA boards. Bucky Aboye, a 7'1" big man, can be really solid, especially against Graham Ike in that Gonzaga matchup. And they're really good offensive rebounding, 37% offensive rebounding rate. They force a bunch of turnovers. There's a lot to like with the Santa Clara team, and to get them plus 425 when they're tied with Gonzaga for first place in the WCC feels like a great bet right now.
Dude, Santa Clara is so fun to watch. They really stress the opposition with their offensive style consistently in pursuit of the fast break. Elijah Mahi is unreal. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Alan Graves. He's scored 10 or more points 10 games in a row. These guys rebound really well. They force turnovers, which leads to run out. I think it is a dangerous team, certainly come conference tournament time. And you mentioned it with a home date against the Zags and a trip to St. Mary's. I think the Broncos do have an opportunity here. Should be really fun to see how this plays out down the stretch for Herb Sendick and the boys because they are playing some really good basketball. We've got a question in from the audience from Arnold Palmett. Thoughts on Texas Tech to win it all? That was a futures bet that we had made earlier in the season, and I think that Texas Tech has a real high upside. Little inconsistency with some of the guys that have seen some minutes lately, and I have been stunned at Grant McCaslin and this defense, at how at times it just seems like this group gets shredded. We never really saw that play out at North Texas, and even his first couple of years at Texas Tech, the defense was the consistent point of this group, and so I'm surprised that the defensive intensity has not been there. They've really struggled at times, really quarantining the opposition. Do you have any thoughts on Texas Tech and maybe how far they could make a run in the NCAA tournament?
I mean, they definitely could have a chance to win it all because when you have a duo like JT Toppin and Christian Anderson, like those, that's probably the best point guard in the country in my view. And Christian Anderson, what he's done this year, and JT Toppin might be the best big man in the country, not named Cam Boozer. But here's my thing about Texas Tech. They've been better defensively in January, 25th in defensive efficiency, but they still have those lapses like we saw against UCF. The thing for me though, when Texas Tech isn't getting a good version of JT Toppin, like against Kansas and some of these games where he's facing other bigger big men who are able to contain him down low, push him off his spot a little bit, and force him to make more like 10-foot shots, more than 3, 4 foot shots at the rim, I think he becomes a little bit easier to contain. And in the NCAA tournament, you're bound to face some bigger big men. If he's not able to get it going, I don't think Texas Tech is going to make a very deep run. But they do have that upside with guys like Donovan Atwell and Jalen Petty who can contribute and shoot the basketball. Their depth isn't great, but that duo, if they're cooking, they can definitely make a pretty deep tournament run. I'm just a little bit concerned about how Toppin does against bigger bigs. That's been a trend I've been watching for a while. And against Flory Badunga, he was clearly outmatched in that matchup, and he's going to face more big men like that in the big dance.
Yeah, I think Texas Tech has an opportunity to really prove it. You look at some of their losses, and they've had some high scoring losses where the offense was clicking and the defense couldn't get stops. And they've had other games like their last game against Kansas where they go the last 5 minutes and they only score 3 points. They're up nine and they lose the game outright on their home floor. So I think they have some opportunity with who they have left on the schedule. They get a huge road date with Arizona. That'll be a big prove it game for them. Iowa State still on the slate, BYU to close the season out. So Texas Tech will have some opportunities to improve their sentiment. Be real interested to see how that one plays out.
Yeah.
Check out the Parlay Express account in the free award-winning Action Network app where we will be posting these plays. You'll find a bunch of other fun lottery long shots and other parlays as well. You can find the quick slip links in this podcast and video description, or you can visit actionnetwork.com/bet now so you can tail all of the bets that we've discussed today. All right, Sean, it's time to run the fast break. We're going to rapid fire 8 bets for each in 10 minutes. We're going to start with you on Friday night as we have a real fun Missouri Valley matchup, and you seem to think there's a road team out there that can get the job done. Talk to me through this matchup between Murray State and Southern Illinois.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Murray State money line here. Minus 110 is what I got it at, and I would still take it to Murray State minus 1.5, -2 if it were to get there. And the thing about this Murray State team, I talked about them earlier. They want to play fast, but so does Southern Illinois. And if you're going to beat Murray State, I don't think you can play that same tempo. We saw Northern Iowa slow it down against them. You don't want to run with this Murray State team because they have more athletes, they have more size. They have more guards that can score it than Southern Illinois does. And the Salukis are great defensively, 43rd in defensive efficiency, but their offense is a complete nightmare. 249th in offensive efficiency. They can't shoot the three ball at all. And with the size that Murray State has and the way they can defend the rim, which is one of their strengths defensively, I think they'll be able to cut off a lot of what Southern Illinois wants to do. I think this is a really good spot to get back on Murray State. Their value is a little bit lower right now, given that they lost 4 straight games before their most recent win over UIC. I think they'll get on track here and show that their talent is a lot greater than what Southern Illinois has to offer.
Southern Illinois is an interesting team coached by Scott Nagy, who spent a lot of years at South Dakota State, helped them transition to the Division One level, and then spent some time at Wright State. And just such a different offense than he's used to coaching. We used to see pace, wide open, taking a bunch of threes, and this Carbondale team is just not that sort of Scott Nagy mold. So when you can't shoot the three ball, and they're one of the worst teams in the country at shooting the three, and they don't take a lot of them. They're more methodical on offense. I'll be interested to see if they can do anything defensively to slow down Murray State, or if this turns into a score fest. I'll be surprised if they're able to keep up here. I'm going to stay in the Friday night slate, and I'm going to lay the number with Davidson at home against Loyola Chicago. This was an Action Network write-up play for me, so I've got the article on the app if you want to go check that out. Loyola Chicago has been stunningly bad this season. They're 6-18 overall. This team cannot shoot. They cannot protect the basketball, and they struggle generating any momentum during live in-game situations. The last 4 road trips in a row have resulted in 14-point losses or worse for Loyola Chicago. And while Davidson has been through a little bit of a rough patch, they did lose to Virginia Commonwealth, George Mason, and St. Louis, 3 of the premier teams in the A10. Davidson did win this first matchup by 15. They led by 19 late, really controlled the second half. And they have just so many shooters that can make you pay with their unique offensive system. When I look at Loyola Chicago, they're 320th nationally in overall defensive efficiency. They cannot defend the three-point arc, and that's going to be trouble on the road here. They don't provide a lot of pressure. And offensively, they turn the ball over more than almost anybody in the country. I expect Davidson to go on a run in the second half and break away. It'll be a 15-4 type of run with at the under 8 minute timeout. I expect them to win this game by 12 to 15 points again in this matchup, so I'm laying it. We'll kick it back to you, Sean, as you're looking at potentially the game of the day in the Big Ten tomorrow. The Illini and the Spartans do battle in East Lansing. Before we get to the play, is there any truth to the talk of Michigan State giving their opponents the crappy rim in the second half, or is that more message board fodder? Talk me through that and why you think the Illini can go in there and get the job done.
I would say more message board fodder. I just think it's a tough place to play in East Lansing. Like that's not no place in the Big Ten is really easy to play, but especially there uh, in East Lansing, that's a really tough spot to play. But for me, this one's about what Illinois can do to slow down Michigan State. And Michigan State, obviously, this year they just don't have very much offense. And that's been a real issue for them in both the Michigan and the Duke game. And those are 2 of the better teams in the country. And we saw what those teams did. Duke went zone in the second half for most of it and just completely stifled Michigan State. And against Michigan, they just couldn't shoot the ball at all. 4 for 23 from deep. That's kind of what this team is, though. Like they don't have very much shooting. In most lineups, they're going to roll out 3 guys who just aren't shooters. That's Jeremy Fears. He's below 27%. Cohen Carr, he's not a shooter. And then you have Carson Cooper, another big man, just not really a shooter. He's a good player, but he's not a shooter. And having those other 2 guys who are on the floor most of the time that can't shoot really takes down what this Michigan State team can be offensively. They're 47th in offensive efficiency. They turn the ball over more than you'd expect from a Tom Izzo coach team. And then also, Illinois probably will go a lot of zone in this game. They have a lot of size to make that 2-3 zone really effective. And I think they will do that to really try to slow this team down, not let them get in transition and make them shoot a lot of threes, which would be a huge boost for the Illini. I know, given that they just lost 2 straight games, it's probably easy to look at Michigan State and be like, this is a spot for them to get right. But Illinois kind of does everything you'd want to do for a team to beat Michigan State. They rebound just as well as the Spartans do. They're great at shooting the basketball with Keaton Wagler. He's been a stud, one of the better players in the country. David Mirkovic, 38% from three as a big man. Tomislav Ivicic, he can shoot it. Then they can also go inside with Andrei Stojakovic. So this is a really well-rounded Illinois team. They're terrific on both ends of the floor. I just don't think Michigan State is up to their level, and we'll see that in this one. So I'll go with Illinois plus 1.5 here.
And just imagine when this group gets Boswell back, they're going to be a really fun team to watch come NCAA tournament time. I'm going to go to the Saturday slate, and we're going to go deep into the dumpster for this one, but I'm going to lay up to 14.5 with Presbyterian, the Blue Hose out of the Big South. They're taking on Gardner Webb. Look, guys, Gardner Webb is the one of the worst teams in the college leagues this year. They are way, way down there with Mississippi Valley State, Coppin State. This team has one win all season against Division One competition against 21 losses. Mostly non-competitive losses. When I look at Gardner Webb, they had zero answer in the first meeting between these two in several areas against the Blue Hose. Gardner Webb could not handle the pressure that Presbyterian put on them, and they committed 17 turnovers. They had zero answer in defending the paint. Presbyterian had 58 points in the paint and shot 30 for 48 from 2-point range in this matchup. 4 players for Presbyterian scored at least 17 points, and they were able to do what they wanted on offense, get the ball into the paint, work some high-low game, and they gained plenty of trips to the foul line. It's not going to go well here for Gardner Webb. When you look at their losses in recent, they've lost their last 4 games by 20 or more points. They're 1-8 in league play. This is another team in Presbyterian that has lost 3 games recently, but those losses were to Winthrop, High Point, and Radford, the top 3 teams in the Big South Conference. This is a much, much different opponent here, and I fully expect a blowout win for Presbyterian. So I'm going to lay up to 14.5 with the Blue Hose. Sean, I'll kick it back to you, and you know more than anyone. I love a gross, under the radar conference under, especially in the Big West. So I might be joining you on this play, but talk me through Russell Turner and the Eaters squaring off against the Gauchos on Saturday night and why we need to go low on the total.
Yeah, I would probably play this one about to 135.5. UC Irvine, one of the better defensive teams in college basketball. No surprise, given that Russ Turner is at the helm, a great defensive minded coach. They hold teams to 40% shooting from inside the arc, the lowest mark in college basketball. Hold teams of 44% effective field goal percentage, fourth in the country. And just perfectly for an under, their offense is really bad, 267th in offensive efficiency. They don't have that interior scoring that they've had in the past with Bent Leutchten last year, with Colin Velp in the past. Kyle Evans really isn't that guy. He's a really solid rebounder, can finish efficiently at times, but he's not really that guy that you're just going to dump the ball down to and let him cook. They do have some solid guard play, though, Jurian Dixon and Darren Saran. Saran can be a little bit up and down, but they do have that solid guard play that'll probably help them a little bit offensively. But I think they'll look to slow this game down a little bit more, given that UC Santa Barbara is a really slow-paced team who struggles on the defensive end. I don't see how UC Santa Barbara really strings together enough scoring here, though. They shoot a lot of threes, 38% from downtown, but Miro Little, their point guard, didn't play in their last game against UC Davis. A little bit more of a high scoring game, but UC Davis is a more up tempo style team. And what I'm kind of looking at here is their game against Utah Valley, which they didn't have Little. They scored 53 points. Without Little against Green Bay, they scored 64 points. Without him, they're a totally different team because they don't really have a point guard. It's more of a by committee approach with guys like Aiden Mahaney, CJ Shaw, ZZ Clark, just a bunch of different guys trying to play that point guard role, but none of them are actually a point guard. And playing against a UC Irvine team that can take you out of everything you want to do offensively, I think that'll be a bit of a problem and make this a much lower scoring game. So if Little's out, I love it even more. I liked it with him in the fold anyways. I just don't think that UC Santa Barbara is going to be able to score a whole lot here. They're going to have to shoot it well, and a lot of those threes are going to be contested. They're probably going to turn it over a bit. So I'm going to go with under the total here, and I'd play it to 135.5 because I expected to probably get steamed down a little bit given the type of defense that UC Irvine can play and the fact that UC SB wants to slow the game down to a halt.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a pace war, but UC Irvine historically, when they get into these important league games on the road, they generally will match the pace of the opponent. In this case, I expect this one to be played about 63, 64 possessions. And you hit the nail on the head with Santa Barbara. They want to shoot threes, and they do well to do that. But I think UC Irvine's length could create a few problems for them. I don't know that they'll get as many open looks. UC Irvine has an above average 3-point defense, particularly in the Big West. I think it's a good look. I'm going to try to match you here with another under. I'm going to stay in the Saturday slate. We're going to go Abilene Christian and Cal Baptist under. The projected total is 134 and a half. When you look at Abilene, these guys have really been struggling. They have failed to break 60 points in back-to-back performances on the road. One of the absolute worst teams in the country in turning the ball over, and now they have to square off against the most efficient defense in the WAC in Cal Baptist. The Lancers are going to play very, very slow, and I think Abilene wants to play slow in this one also. So we shouldn't see much tempo. This may be a 60 possession game. I don't foresee Abilene getting a lot of easy looks in the paint. They're not going to be able to operate offensively how they want to. So what they're going to be forced to do is they're going to have to settle for contested jumpers or long, low percentage three-point shots deep into the possession clock. They don't want to do that. They're 330th nationally in three-point rate. Cal Baptist, they've played two back-to-back overtime games recently, but every other conference game that hasn't gone to overtime has been played in the low 60s for possession count. I think they muck this game up. I think Abilene really struggles to score. Abilene really relies on getting to the foul line, and they commit a lot of fouls, but I don't think we'll see a lot of free throw attempts for Abilene here in this one. Five of the last six meetings between these two have stayed under 135 and a half. And with the projected total right around that, I'm going to dive in under here on this one. We'll go to your last game here from you, my man. It's a Big East affair. It's a nooner. The Hoyas were a bit down on their luck to start Big East play this season, but Ed Cooley has these guys playing really good basketball as of late. Winners of four in a row. Now they're hosting Nova. Talk me through what you're seeing here with Georgetown.
Yeah, Georgetown, they're healthier, and that's made a big difference for them. They've won four straight games. And for me, they have the size to battle against the offensive rebounding of Villanova in this one. Villanova is a great offensive rebounding team. They grab offensive boards 35% of the time. They're a really slow tempo team. They shoot a lot of threes and shoot it well at 36%. Their guard play is pretty good with the Caden Lewis who can get downhill and dish to the shooters. Devin Askew, Matt Hodge, Bryce Lindsey, all those dudes can really stroke it from outside. But I expect Georgetown to really be solid defensively here. They've held their last three opponents to below 70 points, including Creighton and Butler, a really big road win for him in that one. But just having Vince Iwuchukwu back, I think, makes a big difference for him. His ability to defend the rim, his ability to rebound, I think will be a good matchup against Duke Brennan. And then their guards overall are good enough to help them at least stay within the number in this matchup. When you have KJ Lewis, when you have Malik Mack, those two guys can really get after it and score. If this number starts at +5 and ends up at around +3.5, I would like it with the Hoyas because this is probably going to be a defensive battle as both teams are slower paced, defensive oriented teams with defensive minded coaches in Kevin Willard and Ed Cooley. The thing that it kind of comes down to, though, can Georgetown find enough offense? I think they'll be able to because they have the good guard play to make that happen. It just kind of comes down to which version of Villanova is going to show up. Are they going to shoot it well from three? If they do, Georgetown's going to have to fight an uphill battle and play a higher scoring game than they want. But I think Georgetown's defense will be able to help them enough to be able to slow down Villanova's shooting attack. And I think they'll keep them off the offensive boards, which will allow them to get into their half court offense and let Lewis and Mack get to work.
Yeah, and a really underrated defense for Georgetown that's not getting talked about enough. They force opponents deeper into the shot clock than almost anybody in the country. The average possession length against them is 352nd longest. So they really do a good job of making you work methodically on the offensive end. This Villanova team has really had to truncate games down, slow the possession count, and they play a real slow style of basketball. When I looked at this matchup, the under would intrigue me at about 140 and a half. So I might be involved with you in some capacity on this game. I always look to, especially later in the conference season when these games become more and more important. Villanova really needs a win. I'm not suggesting that they get it here, but these possessions in this game are really going to matter. I think both these teams will have to work methodically. I won't be surprised at all if this is a 64-62 type of game that comes down to the last possession. So I might look under here with you, but this should definitely be a fun one. I'm going to close this out here with the fast break section. We got one more play for me. App State is projected to be -5 against Eastern Michigan. The MAC and Sun Belt are doing a fun little challenge this weekend where these teams are stepping out of conference and facing off against each other. But if you just look at the schedule, Appalachian State has played so many more athletic teams, and the speed, the versatility is much greater in the Sun Belt than what I've seen in the MAC from most of the teams that play in the MAC. And App State has been holding these teams in check. They gave up 44 points against Troy on the road, 57 given up against a really salty South Alabama team. Eight of the last nine games for Appalachian State, they've surrendered 63 points or less, and they've been shooting the ball really well. Jalen Tott actually comes off the bench, but he's made five threes or more in four of the last five games. Appy's been real patient on offense. They play slow, but they are very, very athletic. They should shred Eastern Michigan, who lost five games in a row. Not a lot of momentum for EMU. They just simply cannot score the basketball. They shoot poorly from two. They shoot poorly from three. They don't get to the foul line a lot. And I'm not sold. The defense for Eastern Michigan is better for their competition level, but I'm not sold that Eastern Michigan is going to be able to go on the road and pin down App State. So with a projected line of five or so, I'm in on App State. I'd lay up to 6.5 with the Mountaineers. And so that's where I'm at on that one. Let's We got a question in from the audience. We've got Georgios the Wise, who says, "Any thoughts on Texas A&M at 150 to 1 to win the tournament?" When I saw Texas A&M go to Alabama and really compete well, I thought it was just an incredible game. They played to the buzzer. They really stressed Alabama with the pressure. They forced some turnovers. They scored on the fast break. People weren't quite sure what we were going to see from Bucky Ball. They had suffered a couple of early season losses just because it took a little bit of time to simulate live game reps. It was a new system. But I think Texas A&M has the goods to really put a scare into somebody. If you're a one or a two seed and you see A&M on the 8-9, or if you see them on the 7-10 line, I think that's a dangerous out in the tournament. I don't think that these guys are necessarily going to threaten to win the NCAA tournament, but I do not want to play them as a 7 or 8 seed in the second round. Do you have any real glaring thoughts on Texas A&M and where they might be able to end up on the seed line and how far they might be able to go in the NCAA tournament?
Right now, they, according to the Bracket Matrix, which is probably my favorite website this time of year, they are the number one 8 seed. And to me, if they can get on that 7 line, like that, the 7 line is kind of appetizing in a spot to be. Like if this Texas A&M team were to match up against Nebraska or Gonzaga or Michigan State or Vandy, any of those teams who could end up on that 2 line, I kind of like them in this spot. Obviously, I don't want them to face Illinois. I don't want them to face Houston per se or Iowa State. So all those teams are tough ones to match up with. But that last 2 seed or even the bottom two seeds could be pretty appetizing spots for Texas A&M because they are going to make teams play out of their comfort zone. And maybe even Iowa State could be a bit of an appetizing matchup. The way they want to press with Bucky Ball, they're going to force a lot of turnovers. They're going to force you to play out of what you want to do offensively. And that's going to happen for a full 40 minutes. They will relentlessly pressure you. And Bucky McMillan, like this is a guy that's been to the NCAA tournament before. They probably could have and maybe should have beat Kansas in the NCAA tournament 2 seasons ago at Samford. They had a tough couple calls go against them, but they also have the shooting to really make a difference. They have Pop Isaacs, who can really shoot it from the outside. They have Ruben Dominguez, who can be a threat from deep. And they also have a really solid big man in Rayshawn Agee, who's been their best player throughout the year. I really didn't see that coming from him. He's former Bowling Green, former USC big man. He's really been a load to handle down low. He's made a big difference for this Texas A&M team and given them a presence down low that can really score the basketball. But I love the way this team plays. If they end up on that 7 line, I think this is worth the swing at 150 to 1. I don't see a lot of downside to it because if they win a couple games in the tournament, you're definitely going to be profitable there. I think it's worth the swing just given how this team plays and how it could affect the teams that they're matching up with in the NCAA tournament, especially if they get on that 6 or 7 line.
I love it. We have a question that came in from the Action Discord from Mike. If you guys had to pick the spot to target the first straight up loss for Miami of Ohio, where are you putting your money? Is it going to be Marshall this weekend? Is it going to be UMass on the road, Bowling Green at home, or Akron in the MAC tournament? Where is the spot for Miami of Ohio? I've got some thoughts on this, but I want to hear what you think about Miami of Ohio and where they may slip up.
Well, I've already went against them twice in spots where I thought they were going to lose, and obviously that didn't happen. I took Toledo, and that game was basically over within like 5 minutes of the game starting. And then I also took them against Kent State, and that one obviously probably Kent State should have won that game, but it didn't end up going in their favor. This Miami team just figures out how to win games late. The one I think of the bunch that were mentioned is probably that game against UMass. I think that's the one I really like because UMass earlier in the year, a couple weeks ago, they led Miami of Ohio at the half. They were really good on the offensive glass in that game, grabbing 12 offensive rebounds. But really, what I'm looking at is they went 12 for 22 for 40 from inside the arc. Leo Bettiol was really good. Daniel Hankins Sanford is really good. They really had problems stopping those two big men. That's kind of been the DNA for this UMass team this year. That's been a lot better than I thought they would be. They're 6-6 in league play. They have a road win over Buffalo that I thought was a bit of an upset win in my mind. And then they also have the guard play to really compete against the Miami of Ohio team. Marcus Banks is very capable of going off for 25 to 30 points. Danny Carbuccia at that point guard spot. He's a really talented young point guard freshman, great at getting into the lane, a great passer, disruptive defender. If he's able to bring that intensity and get the home fan base into it, I definitely think they could give Miami of Ohio their first loss of the season. Kind of comes down to how those big men play, though. Hankins Sanford and Bettiol. They're really good down low. They could easily combine for 40 points in that game. And they also play a similar pace to Miami of Ohio. Both teams are going to look to push it. And I think getting in transition could be really tough for that Miami of Ohio team to stop because this UMass team is more athletic than Miami of Ohio is. They're not looking to shoot it as much, but they are very athletic and love to get in transition. I think that bodes well for the Minutemen.
We saw two matchups with Miami of Ohio where they squared off against Buffalo. Both games were very, very close. Buffalo did a great job of countering offensively and taking away what Miami's good at defensively. And when you go right at Miami, I mean, it can be really tough. Miami has so many great shooters. We know about Suter, we know about Atlason, we know about Byers. And Woolfolk is really athletic down low, but Miami has gone through several stretches in recent where they go 4 or 5 minutes and they can't hit a shot, and teams can make a run against them. And so that can spell trouble, especially on the road. I'll find it interesting. And Sean, I want to know what you think about this because let's say Miami goes unscathed through the regular season. Let's say they end this regular season without a loss and they advance to take on what we would presume to be Akron in the MAC final. If Miami of Ohio loses in the MAC final, MAC's a two bid league, right?
I mean, I would hope so. If they have one loss and they don't make the NCAA tournament, I think we really need to sit down and kind of reconsider what we're doing here because this team is definitely good enough to be in the NCAA tournament. I know they've had some lucky bounces roll their way, but you don't go 23-0 by being just purely lucky. They haven't had the toughest schedule. I know they're 363rd or 326 in overall strength of schedule, 363rd in the non-conference, but they have played the games on their schedule and won a lot of those games. And I think one thing you kind of have to consider is a lot of high major teams aren't super willing to play mid-major teams that won 25 plus games the previous season. Like you have to actually have high major teams that want to play you, and high major teams weren't really looking to play Miami of Ohio from what it sounds like. So you can only do what is on your schedule, and they to this point they haven't lost a single game. So if they're able to get to the MAC tournament unscathed, even if they have one loss in conference play and then lose to Akron, I think they should be in the NCAA tournament. If they go lose one game, I still think they should be a single digit seed. But if there's a way this team isn't in the NCAA tournament, I think we made a pretty severe mistake, barring a huge collapse from Miami of Ohio.
Yeah, we don't need another 18 and 13 ACC team getting in.
No.
You know, we've all heard the sound bites from Doug Gottlieb about the MAC scheduling and the bye games and how it's tougher for teams in his league to schedule or not schedule, who will play you and who won't. I think for Miami to counter that, all you've got to do is just furnish the emails that say, hey, we asked to play all these different teams and they told us no. So we had to fill our schedule. These are the teams that said yes to us. We'll play anybody anytime. And if you can say that and back that up, I think that should be considered. I don't think the committee will consider that, but I think that is something that definitely should be considered. There's an interesting betting market out there for teams, yes or no, to make the field of 68. And I think this is a real interesting matchup. There's a limited amount of offerings for teams, but right now, current state of affairs, if you had to make a bet on either California, Missouri, or Virginia Tech to make the field, which one of those three teams might you look at?
That's a tough one. I think I would probably go. I think I would go Virginia Tech probably. I think that's the best team of the three. Missouri's going to have some more tough games coming up. We've already seen that they can be up and down in SEC play. They've lost to some of the better teams like Georgia. They lost that one at home. They lost at Alabama pretty convincingly. They did beat Auburn. That was a good win. They beat Florida somehow. I still don't really know how they managed that one. But they have some really tough road games coming up and some even tough home games. Are going at Arkansas. They host Vanderbilt. They host Texas. They go on the road to play South Carolina tomorrow, which won't be an easy game. They're going at Texas A&M. They play Arkansas at home too. Like there's a lot of games on that schedule where I think they will probably end up losing. Cal, on the other hand, not the toughest schedule because the ACC is not nearly as good as the SEC, but I still don't know how good this team really is. Like I think they're fine. If they have an off shooting night, though, they are pretty much doomed. And we saw that against Florida State. They scored 61 points. They didn't shoot it well. They lost. I think Virginia Tech is the most well rounded of those three teams. And they have good guard play with Ben Hammond. Neo Abdallah has not been really good for a while now. He's really struggled. But if he gets going again, I think that'll make a big difference. Amani Hansberry and Toby Lawal is probably one of the more consistent interior duos in the ACC. And then you look at their upcoming schedule, they go at NC State, they go at Clemson in their next two, win one of those two games, and I think they're in a really good spot to make the NCAA tournament. Their home games are against Florida State, Wake Forest, Boston College. There's no excuse to lose any of those games. Go win those games, pick up a couple road wins against NC State, Clemson, Miami, or Virginia, or North Carolina, those five tough road games. Go pick up two wins in those five, and I think they'll be in the NCAA tournament.
Fun to see a team that's projected to be outside the field have opportunities late in February to play their way in. All right, my man. Well, that'll do it for the weekend warm up under the Big Bets on Campus banner. Don't forget to download the free award winning Action Network app and leave us that 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. I will be picking a 5-star winner and giving, or a 5-star review and giving that person a free $25 future for the upcoming 2026 college basketball season. This can be a conference or a national championship future, a parlay, whatever you want. We just need the 5-star review. You can comment whatever you want, but it really does help us out when we can get those 5-star reviews. Somebody's going to win a $25 future. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can search for BBOC and you'll have access to all of our college football and college basketball content. Thank you for joining us on the weekend warm up today under the Big Bets on Campus banner, and we will see you guys at the window.